This presentation is for informational purposes only and is not offered as legal or professional advice regarding any particular matter. No person should act on the basis of this presentation without seeking appropriate professional advice. The speaker's views expressed in this program may not be reflective of those of anyone else, including their respective firms or any of its lawyers, associates, or clients.
Welcome to Supercharged Supply Chain, a podcast that delves into the complex, complicated, and ever-changing world of getting product from a source to a destination with your hosts, Ron Leibman and Joseph Paris. Welcome, everyone. We would like to welcome all of you to Supercharged Supply Chain, a podcast that delves into the complexities of supply chains, logistics. My co-host today and friend, Ron Leibman, joins us from New York. How you doing today, Ron?
Hey, how you doing, Joe? Doing
Not
fine
so bad.
today.
Not so bad. Not so bad. You know, together, we've known each other for, 20 years, 20 plus years, I would say.
Easily.
Yeah, easily. And between us, we're pretty much have enough experience that we go back to the beginning of supply chains, right? The very first one.
Yeah, we using oxen and carts. Yes, I do remember that.
That's right. All before barcodes and transponders and all that really cool stuff. It used to be just ox carts and oxen and going from village to village selling wares. So, but we're not going to be talking too much about the past, are we? We're going to be talking about the future in these podcasts.
Yes, sir. In this one, we're just going to let you guys know a little bit about ourselves and why we came to do this. And then we'll start with our next episode, which will deal with personal protective equipment and the movements of that across the world nowadays. But let me tell you a little bit about myself, since I always try to one-up Joe. I have been in the supply chain and logistics field for 41 years, back in the days before it was known as the supply chain field. I am a lawyer. I head up the transportation, logistics, and supply chain practice at McCarter & English, which is a large U.S. law firm. Our headquarters is actually in New York, New Jersey, and we have 8 additional offices. I am unusual, I think, in the field because I spent the first 17 years of my career as a supply chain executive with a large German freight forwarder in the Macy's organization with Fortunoffs, which at the time was the largest home furnishings retailer. And then most recently, I spent several years running as the head of transportation for a major Northeast wholesaler retailer in the grocery business before I actually started my legal practice. As a lawyer and in my practice group, we pretty much do an end-to-end practice, the typical stuff you would think of modally, but we also do a full practice of trade, commerce, outsourcing, insourcing. So the subject matter that we're going to hit here is pretty much the stuff I work with every day of my life. The reason Joe and I came to this is Joe and I met many years ago in an Association of Corporate Growth meeting and hit it off. So we then started talking, and as you will see, we don't stop talking when we start talking. And we have these calls. He from First Binghamton, New York, but now from Germany, and me. We'll spend an hour or two just talking what's going on in the world, much of that being what's going on in supply chain. And we thought maybe that would interest some of you. What do you think, Joe?
I think so. I find the subject fascinating, and I'll tell you what. There's not a conversation that we have where I don't go away feeling smarter. Admittedly, there's large scope for that, but I always find our conversations interesting, insightful. I always learn something new from you, and it's interesting that me being originally from Binghamton, New York, you have ties to upstate New York too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
right?
I left the South. I actually got my MBA from now the Whitman School of Management at Syracuse University, and I still sit on the H.H. Franklin Advisory Board, the Supply Chain School. And as I said, so long ago that it was called Transportation Distribution Management. But both Joe and I have ties to and love upstate New York, though we avoided it in the snow. Hey, Joe, you haven't told him about your illustrious career, and Joe has one heck of a career.
Well, thanks, Ron. I started my original consultancy, Zonotech Consulting Group, back in 1985. So it almost makes me uniquely unemployable. I've been at it 35 years, I guess now. That's a long time. We started off as a assembler, believe it or not, of IBM PC clones, much like Michael Dell did. The fatal flaw in my strategy compared to Michael's was he was in Austin, Texas, and I was in Binghamton, New York, the birthplace of IBM, and everybody in the area was uniquely tied to IBM. So the thought of having a IBM PC clone on any business's desk was an anthem to anybody that worked there. But I've always had a penchant, a desire to help companies operate better as companies. Not just vertical process optimization, but horizontal integration. I started off with the PC clones, and then we went to network engineering. We laid hundreds and hundreds of miles worth of fiber in New York and the Northeast in general. When ERP came out in the early 1990s, we hopped on that bandwagon. Again, it was a way of binding organizations horizontally. And that was our primary value proposition until about 2002, when I actually became somewhat disenchanted with technology. It sounds a little funny because we rely on technology so much, but at the time, what I saw was these 50-pound brains, really, really, really bright people being glued to their screen, either feeding the beast of IT. And I was like, is technology working for us, or are we working for the technology? So early 2000s, I went on a bit of a dream walk and revisited my university, Binghamton University, and got involved in their system science and industrial engineering department, and fell in love with continuous improvement and how it embraced the human endeavor in operations. And that took me on a tangent into operational excellence. What is operational excellence? And one of my good friends, a Marine aviator, he goes by the call sign Boom. They all go by the call signs, right? And Boom told me that his carrier group was being made operational. And at the time, I was trying to figure out what operational excellence was. And I said, so Boom, tell me what that means. And he said, well, it means that the Navy has determined that the aircraft carrier, all of its apparatus and personnel on board, and all of its support vessels are prepared to engage in the purpose for which it was intended. And it's like, so operational excellence, operational is a condition. It's a state of readiness, if you will, and ended up being the title of my book some years later. But how do we get an organization to work better as an organization has always been my overarching mantra. And from that, I spun off a couple of other things, like the Operational Excellence Society, which is a think tank. The only thing it does is aggregates and creates content dedicated to the field of operational excellence. We have probably about 2,500 postings on it. And from that, we spun off the Readiness Institute, which is a training and education platform for organizations that want to build capacity and capability across their enterprise. A couple of podcasts that I do, and in addition to this inaugural episode of Supercharged Supply Chain, I do the Outliers In, which is sort of like an irreverent look at businesses and business practices, and a podcast called State of Readiness, which is a conversation between me and some leader in industry. So, and of course, I'm easy to remember there, Ron. I'm Paris from New York, living in Frankfurt, Germany. So one of the things that probably to me, Ron, what really got me interested in supply chain was something rather silly, something rather innocuous, barcodes. Whenever I would go overseas, pre-barcode, whenever I would take a trip overseas, my bags would always end up in Paris, because the baggage handler would just see my name on the bag, and it was on that flight to Paris, wherever, regardless of where I was going. And with the advent and the introduction of barcoding and barcode luggage tags, I'm almost certain to get my luggage at the destination that I'm expecting it to be at. So, yeah.
Joe, the last time I took the kids on vacation, we went to Marseille, and my daughter's bag got to Paris and never went anyplace else. So let me tell you, even with barcodes, they find a way of messing it up from time to time.
Well, nowadays with so few people flying, the likelihood of losing a bag is probably greatly diminished. In fact, I just left New York for Germany yesterday. Was at October 21st or something like that, 2020, and no kidding, Ron. There were the plane was 10% filled. I mean, it was so empty. It was almost ridiculous. I don't recall ever sitting in a plane that was so empty.
Let's talk a little bit about how we plan to go about this. Joe and I plan on perhaps monthly putting out one of these. If you guys wanted more, we'll look at that. At the beginning, we're looking kind of what we're doing right here, just to discuss between each other. Over time, we will bring in guests from both sides of the pond and begin to take questions from people. We have some ideas of the first 3 or 4 episodes, what we're going to say, but certainly we'd like it to be interactive in the sense that if the folks out there have questions that are important to them now, we certainly will try to answer them. I will also tell you, if it's something, even with our 100 years of experience, we don't know, we will get you an answer, okay? We will find someone else who does. So we hope to be your source for some fun for 20 minutes to half hour, some learning, and overall, we just hope we find it interesting, and we hope to get to meet some of you sometime.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Ron, because, there's a lot of burning issues and questions out there. We live in a VUCA world, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that'll be a subject of one of our episodes. But those circumstances beget a lot of concerns, a lot of questions, a lot of confusion. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like us to do a little bit of research for them and devote an episode to one of their topics, certainly suggestions are welcome, and we look forward to that, as well as the questions that you might have. We do have a company page on LinkedIn where our shows will be logged and shared, but it's also a place where our constituents, our audience, would be able to ask us questions and make suggestions on how we can improve the show, how it can be of more value to you over time. So we look forward to that engagement.
Okay. And we just want to thank everyone who's listening today. We hope to see you in the near future. Again, our first show will be regarding PPE. I've become very involved in it from a supply chain and a purchasing and sales side in the past few months. Joe on his side with his huge cache of manufacturing expertise, and we hope you join us. Joe? Yeah,
some of the follow-on episodes, in addition to our very next one, which will be on PPE, as Ron just shared, we'll have an episode on a VUCA world and how to navigate your supply chain and logistics operations through such challenges. And another episode will be devoted to resiliency, supply chain resiliency in these challenging times. What does it take to ensure that the product that you're getting gets to where you need it as you need it? So we look forward to you joining us on our next episodes.
Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to another edition of Supercharged Supply Chain with your hosts, Ron Leibman and Joseph Paris.
This presentation is for informational purposes only and is not offered as legal or professional advice regarding any particular matter. No person should act on the basis of his presentation without seeking appropriate professional advice. The speaker's views expressed in this program may not be reflective of those of anyone else, including their respective firms or any of its lawyers, associates, or clients.